Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Attention Please podcast, now on video. If you like this podcast, kindly like, share, subscribe. You know what to do. So today, after a long time, I have a guest, and it is Jamie Alter. So when I was Googling you, I came up with, like, what was the first link? It said, Jamie Alter, meet Jamie Alter, the white man with an Indian passport and heart. This is possibly the most filmy headline that somebody could have. So tell us the story behind this. I read the story, but for the benefit of our audience.
This article, if I'm not mistaken, was done by my good friend Ramarko Sen Gupta during the first lockdown, and he's a fellow journalist. He's a good friend. Sorry, first of all, thank you, Arnab, for having me on the show. I'm blabbing about myself. It's been a long time. You took out time last year to come on my podcast. Now here I am. So thank you, and hi to all your viewers. So going back to that story, Ramarko being a good journalist and a good friend, he sent me the final draft. Said, "Yeah, you want to make changes? Please go ahead." I said, "No, it's fine." But I said, "What headline are you going to give? Because I know you work for a website and you need that, maybe not a clickbait headline, but I know the kind of headline you need to tell the story. So you go ahead and do what you want to do. I know it's going to have the word white. I know it's going to have the word Indian. I know it's probably going to have the word passport. So भाई तू मेरा दोस्त है, तेरे को जो करना है करो." So that essentially is what I am. I'm white, born and raised in India, fourth generation American. Common misconception, Arnab, that I've tried to clear on my YouTube channel for the last 2.5 years. No, I'm not a British leftover. No, I'm not the offspring of any hippies that landed up in India. We're not Anglo-Indian. We are Americans from Ohio in the Midwest who landed up in India in 1916. So if India has managed to deal with the Alter family for over 100 years, perhaps you can deal with us for a few more years.
Right. Yes, a lot of people think that you're British. Yes, I absolutely know that. And I used to think so too, because of your father, because of the roles he used to play.
Absolutely. I get it. It's fine.
All right. But today we are not going to talk about Bollywood of the 90s. That would be another good thing to talk about, but that requires a show of its own.
We should do that though.
Yes. So the first question that I wanted to ask you, and since the T20 World Cup is coming, so let's not ask a question on the T20 World Cup, but do one-day internationals have any relevance, especially after the retirement of Ben Stokes? I think that's a valid question to ask, is that what are we getting out of one-day internationals, if anything?
No, it's a very valid question, Arnam, and it's one that I've also asked guests on my cricket podcast that I do here. Look, I think if I can give a personal anecdote, it was the 1996 World Cup. I was 15 years old. I knew cricket, I like cricket, but I really fell in love with cricket in the 1996 World Cup. Being in a boarding school, being surrounded by your best friends, finding ways, as you do when you have rules, finding ways to watch cricket, But as a 15-year-old, there were times that I'm like, okay, power play is over. Let's come back for the 40th over. Okay, and this was as a 15-year-old. Okay, now 17 years I've been a cricket journalist. I've watched multiple World Cups. I still find, Arnab, and I have no shame in saying it, the bilateral game is painful to watch, right? Which then brings context to, like you said, Ben Stokes retiring at 31, 15 months away from England, defending the only World Cup. Let's remind your viewers, the only World Cup that country's ever won. You have comments by Quentin de Kock saying it's unsustainable. You have news coming yesterday from The Age in the Australian newspaper that, Australian players might go and play other leagues. So cricket is in turmoil right now because of the crammed calendar. And in that crammed calendar, when the most matches are actually bilateral one days, for me, it's problematic because the game needs context. I think the one-day World Cup is still the most commercially viable tournament because, the fans still seem to love it. The ads, you can pack a lot of ads, you get big sponsors. But what happens between those 4 years, Arnab, right? How many bilateral series can anyone who loves cricket put up with? So I think the ICC, all the stakeholders need to sit down and figure out, yes, the World Cup is not going anywhere. They have the elephant in the room called the Champions Trophy, which frankly, I don't think I need to say it again. They don't know what to do with that tournament. They don't know how many teams. So it's these kind of questions and problems that have no seeming apparent answer which has left the bilateral one-day series in a bit of a funk. The ODI Super League was announced by the ICC about 4 years ago to give teams an opportunity to progress to the World Cup. Only the host nation, by being the host, could make it. But 2 months ago or 6 weeks ago, when the South African Cricket Board, actually willingly gave up points, to have all their top white ball players ready for their upcoming league, that came on the heels of Ben Stokes' announcement, or somewhere around the same time. That's another big wake-up call. Why would the players want to play a best of 5 series, a best of 7 series? So yes, the one-day game has relevance, but in my view, Arnab, the bilateral game has no relevance. I've been saying it for weeks now. Bring back the quadrangular. Bring back the tri-series. Give every one-day series some kind of context. I hope that makes sense what I've said.
No, it absolutely does. I absolutely agree, especially bilateral series between India and Sri Lanka, and India and West Indies, which we always used to have when Sachin Tendulkar needs to get the 100th century. It's like one of those fillers. Sorry for the interruption kind of thing, which people just put in when they want to get on to other things. Now, there's another thing that I believe has, at least for me, I'm no longer so interested in one days. It's because for me, the one day internationals it's a branding thing, right? Why would I watch a one day international? Now, when there was just test matches, I used to watch it for the fireworks, right? This is a place where people would try to hit sixes. Now with T20, that is no longer the case. So it's kind of in the middle. Now, where I believe that the ICC royally screwed up was, I think, the 2016 World, which one was the one that was held in Australia, where the scores it was like essentially they made the rules such that it was like basically 2 2020 matches right after another. So the scores, that 35th over power play and everything, the scores kind of became 350. So they thought that scoring more runs, basically taking out that boring period in between, is the solution to solving it. But for me, that was absolutely useless, because now I was watching 2 T20 games one after another. For me, the one-day games that I remember, and part of it is, of course, a function that I grew up in the 90s, are low-scoring thrillers in Sharjah. So for me, a good one-day match is a 250 score. Where a 250 score is a winning score. It's kind of a halfway between a test match and a T20. Yes, the main thing is a test match. It is a test between good bowling and good batting. But yes, there is an incentive to hit. It's not that you have to hit a 6 every ball. The moment we get to that, then for me, it is absolutely relevant. I would prefer to watch T20, even T10. I don't know if you've ever seen one of the T10 tournaments where they score like 120, 113 every 10 overs. So then it just becomes that. Then even T20 makes no sense. I'll watch T10 if I just want to see people going crazy hitting balls, like Hong Kong sixes. Do you remember when we were growing up?
Absolutely, in the 90s. No, I get your point, and I agree with what you're saying to an extent, because it cannot all have the same narrative, right? I know that T20 is the most popular format, but even in T20, how many IPLs have we seen? And I'm saying IPL because let's face it, it is the most lucrative, the most watched, the most attended T20 league of all leagues. But there were about 4 or 5 seasons there where every match seemed to have the same kind of pattern, right? So when you get too much of one thing, right? It's like you mentioned the ideal one-day score for you. For me, Arnav, I felt for the longest time that a test match, the format that I really love, no team should ever score more than 375 in any innings, because then you get the best chance of that match going to day 5, and no team gets 2 ahead. How many times have we seen you talk about Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, South Africa, one team scores 652, and in case the other team doesn't get bowled out, then that team is replying with 495. Who wins? It's just stat padding. So just along the same lines of what you said, have a good score, right? We just saw India play West Indies. Well, I didn't see because the matches got down at 4 in the morning. But but the teams in the first 2 one days, both teams got to 300 and they got 300 plus. Both teams, the matches went to the final over. Now, in isolation, these should be engaging, fun T20 one-day matches, but they weren't. Not about the quality of it. It's because no one really cares, right? This is the first series where there was no private sponsor. These matches were being streamed on an app called Fan Code, right? And on Doordarshan. So all this put together red lights are flashing. Okay, the ICC really does not know what to do. Yes, we have a calendar. We have to send teams. Whenever the Indian team goes to England, 8 times out of 10, that's followed by a brief white ball trip to the West Indies. I get it's a quicker flight, but
Yes.
you have to be thinking beyond that. Pitches, standard, forget two new balls, forget reverse swing. What context does the one day game bring beyond the obvious thing about more ads being packed in and more sponsors? What is the fan getting out of it? You cannot have every match going to 375. You cannot have every match going to 400 like Owen Morgan said. Equally, you can have every match being 200 all out. All these things put together, there's no straightforward answer. But to keep the game alive, to keep the game that we grew up watching, something drastic has to be done very soon.
Right. I agree. No bilateral series. Maybe one Champions Trophy and one World Cup. That's it. One every 2 years.
Sure.
One every 2 years to break it up, and that's it.
Sure.
Maybe one trilateral series. And again, I'm pretty sure in the next few years. Today I was reading an article about like Kolkata Knight Riders were saying that they were basically willing to pay their like Sunil Narayan and Andre Russell not to play in any other league. So they essentially become like employees of
Yep.
And so once that happens, there'll be a lot of players who will just ditch the one day international and say, okay, I'll join the government Naukri and become a franchise.
Oh, exactly. I mean, just to interrupt, I had a former India player and BCCI selected Jatin Paranjpe on my show about 2.5 weeks ago, and we were talking about Virat Kohli, the funk. So I put the question to him: if Virat Kohli at the age of 34, where athletes way more skilled than him have had to take the call about when do I quit, what format do I quit first, and given the fact that he's struggling the most in T20s, I asked him, I said, do you think that's the format Virat Kohli might give up? And Jatin's answer came, no, I think he'll actually give up the one day match, right? I'm like, but there's a World Cup in 50 months. He's like, he might get that far, but when Virat Kohli sits down to assess his body, his workload, his own form, he will see that India's probably playing 5 to 7 test matches a year, 8 to 10 T20s, and then some 21 days. So he will quit the format where, yes, he's got an outstanding record, but he'll quit the one in which he's playing the most and not getting that much out because of this same topic of relevance. So, players will, I think Ben Stokes is just one big example, but many players will probably give up that format because the test format, Arnav, test format, it's still cherished. It's still the benchmark. Players don't mind playing it. Right. But you probably will see more guys being at bilateral 5 matches. Chodo yaar, mere ko nahi khelna hai. That's
test matches is, I think test matches are going nowhere. People might not come to watch them, but the fact is players want to play test matches because that's the only thing that gives them a place in history, right? Otherwise there is no comparison. That's the game. That's the definition of the game. The other ones are offshoot. Okay, so moving on to the second question, which again now is on T20. So what do you think should be India's best squad for Australia?
We're looking at
the bowlers.
We're looking at a squad of 15, right? Or 16?
15 to 16. Okay. Let's say 15 to 16.
Let's start with the bowlers because I have a lot more to talk about the batsmen. So let's get the bowlers out of the way. I'm going to put in Jasprit Bumrah. I'm going to put in Bhuvneshwar Kumar, who to my mind, and I was speaking to someone yesterday and I said, Bhuvneshwar Kumar could be the bowling story of the last year because this time last year he was about to be written off. So and help me if I get the numbers wrong because I'm bad at math. We have Bumrah, we have Bhuvneshwar, we have Yuzvendra Chahal, we have Arshdeep Singh. If Harshal Patel gets back to fitness, I'm going to put in Harshal Patel. That's 5. We do need a second spinner, but we might even take an all-rounder in Deepak Hooda. So I'm going to put in 6. Speaking of all-round, I'm going to put in Hardik Pandya 7. Keepers are going to be Rishabh Pant. For some strange reason, Dinesh Karthik, I don't know. So we're up to 9 now, I think, right? By my count. Then you get Rohit Sharma, Virat Kohli, Surya Kumar Yadav. KL Rahul will, with some strange reason, he'll force his way back. That should take us to 12 or 13. I'm missing. I don't think Shreyas Iyer is going to go. You need another opener. Ishan Kishan may still make it. Who am I forgetting? Another all-rounder. Jadeja probably will go as well. I think that should be 15 by my count.
So the only thing, so let me challenge you on one thing. So
Ha,
for
ha.
me, the bowlers, number one, of course, Bumrah, there is no doubt. My second bowler is actually not Bhuvaneshwar Kumar. My second
Okay.
bowler, because it's Australia, is Mohammad Shami. So because I want Bumrah to bowl at the back. I want
Sure.
Shami to bowl in the beginning. So because I think that there needs to be a wicket-taking bowler. I personally don't think Bhuvaneshwar Kumar is great for Australian conditions. He's a more an England condition bowler than an Australian condition because he doesn't hit the deck. So he's
Right.
a
Right.
swing. He doesn't from the pitch, it doesn't move
Sure.
that much. So
Sure.
I would put Bumrah and Shami as my number one, number two.
Okay.
I would want Harshal, of course. Um, there's another wild card that I have, which is Umesh Yadav, because I think Umesh Yadav hasn't bowled. He had a very good season with KKR. Of course, since I follow KKR, I've been following Umesh Yadav. Umesh Yadav has a pretty good, decent record in Australia. And he's the kind of bowler who does well in Australia. I know
Yep.
that
Yep.
he's not the youngest bowler anymore, but I think you can get 4 good overs out of him in the beginning. So this is what I would have. I would again have Deepak Chahar. I don't know where he is on the fitness scale, but Deepak
He,
Chahar
he
brings.
he's just come back, but given the fact that it's a World Cup, um, all that's happened to him, I don't see him going unless he takes a bunch of wickets in the next 1 month. But
Right. The problem with Arshdeep is, again, this might be my bias, but I get strong Rajat Bhatia vibes from Arshdeep. So he has that comfortable 32, 132, 133 that he max hits. And I just feel that in Australia, that's absolute cannon fodder. That
right.
pace, that line that he bowls. So I wouldn't, there are some places where he might be good in UAE, for instance, but I wouldn't take him to Australia, especially also he's inexperienced. So he is
Sure.
the wheels will come off in big games. So that's what I'm worried. That's why I want a little bit experienced people like
Yep.
Umesh Yadav who have been
Yep.
there.
Yep. Yep.
Then, of course, spinner Chahal is the number one spinner right now.
Sure.
Now, with the batting, I think, again, I'm going to say something very controversial, and I've said this before. It's firstly, Rohit Sharma is going to play, but I wish he didn't. I wish Rohit Sharma and Virat Kohli didn't play in this World Cup. And the reason for that is that the only time India won the T20 World Cup was when Sachin and Rahul Dravid and all these guys didn't play. They were still at that point of time the best players in the country on paper, right? But
Yep.
but for me, T20 cricket is a very, very young man sport. It just
Yep.
requires you. And again, it's not a question of skills, but when push comes to shove, it just requires a different kind of risky thinking that
Sure.
unfortunately, when you get mature, and I know it myself, you just can't do at some point of time
Yep.
in that
Yep.
split
Yep.
second. And you know what my real fear is, that we are going in what is going to be our top three: Rohit Sharma, KL Rahul, and Virat Kohli, right? This is the exact same top three we had in the disastrous game against Pakistan. Who do we
Correct.
play the first game? Pakistan.
Correct. Correct.
So and these players are 1 year older from what they were last time. So if anything, it has gone down for them.
Yep.
So this is what I believe is fundamentally wrong with the side, is that the top
Absolutely.
three, it doesn't matter who we bring after that. And again, I have also an issue with Dinesh Karthik. And I think you have that too. Even though Dinesh Karthik is batting very well, I just don't feel you can carry one person in Australia for
Yeah.
that one finisher that he will do.
Yep. So again, that's the thing. Sorry. Exactly. What has Dinesh Karthik done since coming back? 2 innings out of what, 10, right?
Yes.
Now, you asked me what squad is going to go. I have given the squad that most likely will go. I'm on the same page you. I have said in open forum, if Rohit, Rahul, and Kohli are your top three, then forget about you. You're looking at a worse World Cup than last year. Okay. KL Rahul has not played a single T20I match for India, Arnab, and today is August the 5th, right? On what basis does he walk back? Runs scored at a strike rate of 125 for that Lucknow franchise. In my book, I'm sorry. Virat Kohli has played 4 of 21 T20s in this year. He's been rested and rested and let's just say rested more than he's played. Rohit Sharma's form, no one is talking about. If these three guys, like you rightfully said, a year older, one guy's not played for 8 months, he's not played for India in the format. On what basis are you going? If it was my book, these three guys would also not be going to Australia. A lot of people have thrown at me, Virat's got a good record in Australia. Yeah, good hota hoga, but right now, 2007, go for youngsters, pick the guys who are doing well. That's another topic, as well. So many guys have come in and done so well. It's unfair on a Huda or someone if Rahul, who's not played for 8 months, walks in and takes his place, right? So I think the closest indication to the squad will be the Asia Cup, But I mean, you mentioned last year's T20 World Cup. That World Cup was India's to actually go and lose, and that's what happened. If and that one man, I think Rohit came to bat at number 3, right? If Rohit Sharma does not fit your opening 11 as an opener, he has no place in the squad, right? So I'm on the same page. In a perfect world, in my world, these three guys would not be going, but they will go because we play on reputation, on legacy, and all that stuff. Yeah, I would.
That's our top 3, and that's what worries me, that we don't.
Absolutely.
Number 4 is redundant given those top 3. And there is another thing that I would like to say here before I forget, is that for me, and again, I'll go back to KKR. So one of KKR's most successful opening partnerships was Narayan and Chris Lynn. And there was a reason for that. The reason was essentially that Narayan and Chris Lynn are terrible openers by themselves. They have proved it also that they're terrible openers by themselves. But what happens is one guy can't play spin. Chris Lynn can't play spin. He can play fast deliveries. Faster it is better for him. And Narayan can't play pace. He can play spin. So the moment you put both of them together, the only thing they have to do is take the single. That's it. Narayan can't take that sometimes, and that's why he used to get out. But if he could take the single, it's very difficult because they're very contrasting players, and they're also right, left hand. So for me, the ideal, and this is where I think, and this we have done so many times, we take our best players, and the best players are actually not given their proper spots because of the generation before them. And then Surya Kumar Yadav will get his spot when he is over the hill, and then he will prevent the next guy from playing in his right spot. So for me, out of the top 3, it doesn't, if you are going to play, you cannot play both Rohit Sharma and KL Rahul, at least for me. If you want, you can play one of them and say, okay, we want one solid ICC tournament ready, experienced guy. So either Rohit Sharma, who has a very good ICC tournament record, or KL Rahul, who is the younger of the two. But both can't open. If one opens, then for me, the other guy has to be, and they tried, Pant. The reason why is that there are 2 reasons. Firstly, he's left-handed. Secondly, he's a better batsman than Ishan Kishan. Third is the one thing that Pant can do, and that's why I brought the Chris Lynn example is, see, KL Rahul and Rohit Sharma are very conventional players, right? You need a 360 player along with that, so that the bowler is the same thing as Lynn and Narayan, is the bowler can't keep bowling the same line. See, if the players start moving, taking singles, and one goes 360, it's just very difficult for a bowler to get the line correct. The problem with KL Rahul, and see, what happened with Pakistan? The problem with Pakistan was that Rohit Sharma and KL Rahul have identical techniques. Okay. They have identical techniques. They have identical weakness against the in-swinging left-arm bowler. So they will start with Shaheen Shah Afridi. That's absolutely, we know exactly how this is going to go, right? And Kohli also has the same problem. So 1, 2, 3 has the exact same problem. And good left-hand bowlers, we saw in West Indies, even a second-rate bowler can, on a decent pitch, can.
That's what I was going to say. Imagine exactly. 6 for 17. That's insane.
A very second-rate bowler can. And, Shaheen Shah Afridi is definitely a very good bowler. So if you have somebody like that, and those 3 people walking in who play identical kinds of cricket shots, and none of the 3 guys are in the prime of their life, let's put it. So that's the problem. Now so for me, the top 3 should be, you have one of KL and Rahul, Rohit Sharma, and you have Pant, and you have Surya Kumar Yadav. Surya Kumar Yadav, if he goes below number 3, I think he's wasted, because remember, in Kolkata Knight Riders, he used to be played as a finisher. He can't play as a finisher. Surya Kumar Yadav's best performance comes when he's either opening for Mumbai Indians or when he's one down and he comes in early. He can't start playing at the 8th, 9th over because he's conventional, but the fact is once he gets his eye a little bit in, he can then do 360, but he can't do 360 from ball one. So you need him. So have a conventional player and have 2 360 players around him. That to me, and then have Deepak Huda come in at number 4. That to me is a dream T20 1, 2, 3, 4. And we are not going to have any of that.
We're not going to have any of that. I agree with most things. I would not perhaps use the KKR example because the gulf between IPL and top cricket is huge. Also, the second thing is I've actually seen Surya Kumar Yadav walk in at 4 and first ball go in. So I think he could perhaps have a role at 4. But I see your point. In a perfect world, I would have him at 3 as well. But just going back, Arnab, to what you said about these three, Rohit, Rahul, and Virat Kohli. Now, if you watch the England T20s, if you watch the Ireland T20s, if you watch most of the West Indies ones, well, we've only had 3 so far, there has been a definite shift to let's score quicker runs. Okay. In England, we saw if 5 guys get scores of 35, no 60s, no 70s. If 5 guys get scores of 35 at a strike rate of 190 to 210, we're getting 160 on the board. We're confident with our bowlers, we will defend that. 160 won't always work, but it worked overall in England right now. This is under Rohit Sharma and Rahul Dravid. It's a clear change. Whether Pant opens or other, KL Rahul has not had any time to buy into that approach. Right? You have to convince the player to buy in. This is a guy who made that bizarre comment about strike rates are overrated. Okay, so you're going to expect a guy who has that mindset, right? Who plays well within himself, walking back after 8 months, having not played a single T20I in the whole year. He cannot be, and it's not about a skill. The guy is phenomenally talented. He cannot walk in after 8 months and immediately start to play the way the team is now playing. The last time KL Rahul played for India in 2021, the team had that old mentality. Now that mentality is changed. Second thing is, Virat Kohli tried to play them in England and he got out playing one of the worst shots of his career. So by default, you've ticked off these 2 guys. Okay. Kaun bacha? Rohit Sharma. He's at least trying to get there. Yes, he hobbles off every 6-7 matches, but he's the best out of these 3 to try. His strike rate did touch 200 in one of the games. His score, unfortunately, was only 28, but he could try. These 3 guys cannot play the new India template right now. And Arnab, the World Cup is little over 2 months away. You cannot be chopping and changing. If you wanted Surya Kumar Yadav to open, you should have had him open a year ago. I'm shocked that they're trying Pant 1 match, Surya Kumar 1 match. The World Cup is 2 months away. We planned 8 months for the last World Cup, and what happened there, we've seen. I think this World Cup, and people are going to hate me for this, it's actually going to be worse than last one.
I'm worried too. And coming back to Surya Kumar Yadav, see what are the 2 situations he will come in. He will either come in at 15 for 3 with 15 for 3 with Shaheen Shah Afridi or Trent Bolt in Australia. Shaheen Shah Afridi or Trent Bolt or somebody at the peak, like they are in their full rhythm, and Surya Kumar Yadav comes in. So Surya Kumar Yadav, I really like Surya Kumar Yadav, but it's too much for him at that point of time. Either that, or he comes in at around 8th or 9th over with like 70 runs on the board, because the first 3 can't go beyond that. If they go beyond that, it's 15 for 3, right? So the best case is that, and the worst case is that. There's no good way out for Surya Kumar Yadav at this point of time. So here's what happens is that, and this is unfortunate tragedy, is that these guys, the top 3 will still play perhaps in the next T20 World Cup. Surya Kumar Yadav is the guy who's not going to play because because as I said, there is no good way out for him unless he has a.
I still have a lot of high regard for him and the kind of rise we've seen, in his game. Yes, he's not played in Australia, but if there was one player right now who I would say can bail the team out more than others, it would still be him. So I probably have a little bit more faith in him. But again, if it's 15 for 3 and of course, Bolt and Afridi are 2 of the best left armers. Any left armer going around right now. Probably if these guys were facing Ardeep Singh in a match, he also might get a wicket. It's the same problem. And it just goes back to 2017 Champions Trophy final. 3 balls from a left arm pacer knocked you out of the match. 2019, it was again Trent Bolt, What was Virat Kohli? What was Vikram Rathod? What were all the coaches? What were they doing between 2017 and 19 and then 21? In these 4 years, what were they doing to conquer Virat Kohli's problem against left-arm pace, right? If you don't, this is why I think Arshdeep will go, because just having one left armer, forget the pace, having one left armer in your squad means you're facing 30, 40, 60 balls of a left armer every day. When you're not doing that, then you're cannon fodder for a bowl. This is why I think Arshdeep's presence is actually very, very undervalued.
As a net bowler.
Squad.
As a net...
He has to go. It's simple. If you're not facing left armers throughout the year, how are you supposed to play Bolt and Shaheen Afridi in a World Cup? This is why India are taking Arshdeep Singh to there. He may not play, but they need as many. I would take 10 traveling left armers for the World Cup and say, bhai, tum log inko dalo. Because it will come down to Afridi, Bolt. It could be Obed, McCoy. I don't know who else is a left armer nowadays, but the moment these guys walk out to bat, captain is saying, boss, start.
Australia has the best one day. I mean, Stark is there, right? So
Stark, yep. It'll always bother India until they have at least 2-3 left armers traveling with them all the time.
Right. And which brings me to DK, Dinesh Karthik. So Dinesh Karthik is, as we were saying, so there's one person who I feel that the Indian team should have tried, which was given Sanju Samson a little bit of a longer rope. Because again, this is my personal opinion. Again, Sanju Samson hasn't performed in Australia either. But just the style of cricket that he has, I think he's good for. He can't play the swinging ball in England, but Australia, I think the way he plays, he has a good back foot game. So I think that he is somebody who they should have definitely played him a little bit more. They play him for one game and then they just throw him away. So again,
it just goes back to what you were saying a while ago about the clarity of roles. They've not been able to figure out where do we fit this guy. Now coming back to Dinesh Karthik, he's been picked for a very specific role, which Indian cricket has never actually had this specific focus on any single player in white ball cricket that I can imagine. Hats off to him for turning himself around, for keeping himself relevant at the age of 37. He had a fantastic run with RCB, great. But since I have no issue with him being picked after that. Your ticket to getting selected is doing very well in the IPL. Forget domestic. IPL mein aap score karte ho, you get picked for India. But since then, it's just to a 50 and a 40. It's not enough to, I say, sustain him for the World Cup. That's my issue. I agree with you. Australia is very different, but it's because Samson, they're not seeing Samson as a number 7 batsman, right? Whereas they're seeing Dinesh Karthik. Their thinking could be flawed, but it's a very definite line of thinking. We don't want Karthik facing more than 12 to 15 balls. Now, what happens is when the team collapses, Karthik's walking in, like you said, Suryakumar Yadav walks in the 9th over. He will still do it. Karthik is like, yeah, I'm batting in the 10th over. This wasn't part of the plan, right? Then you're stuck with him. So that's the bigger problem. If India are 15 for 3 and then 25 for 6 or whatever it is, if he's walking in, he needs to come in like Andre Russell for your KKR. He should not come in before the 18th over, 17th over, right? But you cannot bank on such scenarios consistently. You can train for such scenarios, and apparently no one trains better for these than Dinesh Karthik. But him walking in the 10th over, I can name 5 other players I'd rather have walking in there, and Sanju Samson would be one of those.
There's another thing, famously Dhoni said years ago that, on larger Australian grounds, he could only play Gambhir, Sehwag and Sachin, one of those, two of those. So we're back to Australia, and who are we carrying? We have Rohit Sharma, who's obviously not, he doesn't look fit. Let's put it like, he doesn't look like a modern cricket athlete. Okay, Virat Kohli might be getting on, but he still looks fit and he's still fit. KL Rahul, never the best in the field. You have Dinesh Karthik. Yeah, he's fit, but he's still 37. So you have Mohammad Shami. So you're carrying about, in that 11 side, about 4 or 5 players who don't really meet the modern standards of fitness in Australia. So that's another thing. We are going to leak like 10 runs every game because of that, in my opinion. And that's another reason why I have a problem with Dinesh Karthik. He's not going to be keeping, right? Pant is going to be keeping. So you can't hide him behind the stumps. So that is, it's going to take a toll. There's just too many old people in the side at this point of time. And anyway, so coming back to the last question, who do you think, we've talked about India. I think both of us agree that India is not the favorite in Australia this time. And of course, we would like to be proven wrong. We would like you
Absolutely.
we would love to be proven wrong. We will then say we were reverse jinxing, whatever. But the thing is, they're not the favorites. So who would you say are the favorites in Australia?
Look, I think the answer lies in, yes, it'll be almost a year, in fact, from the last World Cup. But I think the fact that nobody, even Australians, didn't give Australia a chance, I think that perhaps brings in one of the teams who are not fancied. But even the fact that Warner's not been scoring runs in T20, Finch's struggles, I think the fact that it's a home World Cup, and if Australia can channel all that they learned in the UAE last year, I think I would have them in my top two. Despite the problems that England have had, I still also put them up there. Yes, there's no Morgan and they're struggling. But if Josh Butler bats the way we all know he can bat and all their players work, I still have these two teams as the two safest bets. New Zealand is always a lovely story. Are they the best team ever? No, but somehow they pull above their weight. I would put them down to probably England or Australia. If, again, Pakistan, there's no point even predicting because you never know what they're going to do. But I'm finding it tough to look beyond Australia, firm favorites, and England second. I see the Asian teams struggling this time around.
Yes, I would. For me, England, I would have said England, but I think England, at least from what I saw, their bowling looks really weak. Like really, really weak. If England bowlers struggle in England against India, they're going to struggle in Australia. The Australian bowling side seems to be much better than the English. The England side without Archer, and Archer is a phenomenal talent. Phenomenal. On his day, he is like amazing. So without Archer, who's a match winner, I just don't think there is one England player in the bowling. Yes, Butler can win you a game or two on his own. He's that good. But England, I just think consistently, they don't have the bowling power to go the distance, in my opinion. New Zealand, in my opinion, does have the bowling power to go this. So New Zealand is one of my favorites. They do punch above their weight, but given the conditions, I think New Zealand is the most balanced of all the sides. In the sense that they tick all the boxes. They have a good left armour. They have a good right armour. They've had, Kane Williamson again hasn't been in. He's kind of having a Kohli kind of slump, but so if he was at his best, I would have put them number one without doubt. But there's a little bit of a problem there. But some of the other batsmen have been playing well. So I think he can hide. Another good thing about New Zealand is there's nobody to hide in the field. Pretty solid fielding side. The other side, I would say, again, Pakistan, you can never say. But given the phenomenal form that Babar Azam is in, I mean, the thing with T20 versus one day is that in T20, and the example, I know that you don't like comparing IPL to international T20, but see, Dave Warner has won an entire tournament for SRH, one person essentially batting. So the thing in a limited 20, and last year also in IPL, Josh Butler basically took Rajasthan where there was nobody else, right? So one person can make, especially in batting, can make a huge difference. It's not so much in one day, and it's absolutely not true in tests. So so in test, that's the thing about test. Everybody has to pitch in or there's no winning. So in one day, if you have, so for me, if you have Babar Azam and their keeper, what's his name?
Rizwan.
Rizwan. So if you have Rizwan and Babar Azam, two of them, one of them like scores 50, 60 every game. One fails, the other guy does. And then you have Harris Roth, who, by the way, has bowled well in BBL before. So he knows the conditions pretty well. He was a standout performer in BBL. So you have Harris Rauf, who's played in those conditions. So it's not foreign for him. You have Shaheen Shah Afridi, you have their new guy, Shahnawaz Durrani. So again, they have the bowling attack. They've always had a bowling attack. The main thing is their batting has been weak. But I think they have two batsmen who can consistently win you till the final. But they might implode, of course. But I think for me, the favorites are Pakistan and New Zealand. Australia, I'm not sure that I see it in their batting. The batting for me is weak. I don't know what form David Warner is. And again,
he's not been doing well.
Again, also David Warner is also at the fag end of his career, right? Things are going to get worse for him. He has the same problem that Rohit Sharma has, right? Great T20 player, but his best days are behind him. So for me, it's a young man's game. I like to focus on the young performers in T20 more than anything else. And I just feel that New Zealand have a young side. Pakistan has a young side. There's another side which I would put as like South Africa. I don't know if you've been following them recently, but they got Relay Russo back. And he has been doing great in there. I know that T20 leagues, the standards were, but he puts, in my opinion, he puts that X factor back in South Africa that they have been missing since basically AB de Villiers went away. So again, given Australia, I would put them as kind of my third. But other than these three people, Pakistan is the only subcontinental side which I think can do it. India and Sri Lanka, of course, not.
Yeah, it's tough. No, and again, I mean, I think South Africa, yes, they have Russo's back. Reza Hendricks has reeled off some 550s. But just the fact that it's South Africa, we all know how that's going to end. So I don't rate them for any World Cup, any ICC event. New Zealand, interestingly, I get your point. They actually have the most players who are over 30. But like you said, because they're fit, it's not a problem. Bolt, Sodhi, Williamson, Guptill, and Daryl Mitchell, these are all the 34 to 36 age.
I didn't know Guptill. I didn't know Daryl Mitchell was 34. Okay. Because
they're all pretty recent. They're all 30 something plus. So if these guys don't, if any problem, and I think the Kane Williamson factor, like you said, had he been scoring runs, I would have him. But the guys, they have a lot of guys who are 30 plus. And I think Martin Guptill probably, this is his last tournament. It's going to be Bolt's last tournament, Sodhi's last tournament. So they also have guys who, if things don't work out, in my mind, you could see that the negative side of Australia also showing up here. And in regards to Pakistan, they of course have the most vibrant, they have the youngest thing. But I just think Babar and Rizwan are good for scoring runs in friendly conditions. I don't think, especially Rizwan, because Babar's gone to Australia and scored. Rizwan might struggle on those tracks. So for me, it's, but again, the fact that you and I can only pick 2 teams out of 10, it says that this is going to be a very, very intriguing World Cup, to say the least.
Absolutely. I'm very intrigued. I wish the best for India, and I hope that they, even if they don't win, at least they fight. Unfortunately, the last T20 World Cup, they didn't fight. It was like watching the 2007 one day World Cup. It was like a spineless, gutless performance. Like there was no time that we felt that we were winning. There was not even one over where we even had a chance of winning this tournament. So that's what I want. I wish it doesn't happen.
I think if they pick the right team, if they make the tough calls, it should not be that bad. But I know they're going to repeat the same mistakes. It's like I was talking to someone recently, and they said, "Do you want 168 for 2, or do you want 190 all out?" And I said, "I want 190 all out." It's that extra push, that extra scrap for 15, 20 runs. That's weird. And I think we saw it in the last World Cup. Virat Kohli batting the whole thing for 68. Yes, wickets had fallen, but it's a whole year on Arnab from the last World Cup. And I just don't think the team has evolved enough in the last 1 year. Unfortunately.
If India's score is 160 for 2, at the end, I can guarantee that KL Rahul has scored 85. I can guarantee you that.
Or Rohit, but that's the problem. All 3 of these guys are capable of batting, It's like, again, just to go back to the IPL, when Hashim
Rohit will possibly get out. I don't think Rohit will bat for 85.
Or injured.
He'll get out. He'll injure to something. But KL Rahul will be there with 85 runs at the end, 160 for 2.
Whenever you see a T20 match, going back to the IPL, I remember Hashim Amla had one good season with 11 Punjab. He would be 101 not out after 20 overs. Josh Butler would come and finish the chase with 2 overs left. So those days are gone. Like I said, give me 5 to 6 35 scores of 35 at a strike rate of 190, and I guarantee you the team will win more matches.
Right. That's the modern way of playing. I mean, that's
absolutely younger players and go hard. That's it.
Last thing, since you mentioned Australia, who do you think will be in the Australian team? I mean, other than David Warner, who opens with David Warner? McDermott? Like who's Mitch Marsh?
It's Finch's last World Cup, so they've been asked about Finch. They said we have faith in him for one more World Cup. I don't think Finch will play beyond this year. He's just playing for that home World Cup, defending champion. It'll still be Warner, Finch, Marsh. They'll use Alex Carey. They'll use this guy Nick Maddinson may come in. They had Stoinis, Matthew Wade last World Cup, so he'll be there. The team is not going to change itself. You'll see Travis Head squeeze in. They're not going to make changes. They're hardly playing any T20s recently, but they're a team which will fully put faith in the same squad that went last time. You might see a second wrist spinner come in. I think Zampa was, I think, the best bowler of the last World Cup.
Zampa will definitely
do well. Definitely. So they might pick another. They have that other guy. I'm forgetting his name now. The left-handed,
yes.
The spinner. So I think you're not going to see any new faces in them. They're not ones like us who will chop and change openers 2 months before a World Cup. They'll back Warner at 35. They'll back Finch at 35. They'll back Cummins, Josh Hazelwood. Ye kaam hai. This is why I think they're the best team going into the World Cup.
All right. Well, thanks a lot for this very spirited discussion. Really enjoyed this, and we should definitely do this more. This time with Bollywood, maybe, because we've done 2 cricket ones already.
We have. Absolutely. No, it's been a pleasure, Arnab. Thank you for having me, and thank you to all the people who are watching and who please like, share, subscribe, do all the good things. It means a lot to people who take time out to put out videos. So
absolutely,
I'll definitely be back whenever you call me, Arnab.
Please do. It was great talking to you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.